Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and we're here to interview the game changers, the future makers, the co-collaborators and creators who are here to collaborate with one another towards a better future for all of us. Enjoy the show. We've got a great guest coming up for you right now. Welcome to Make More Marbles. My name is Brad Hart, and today I'm joined by Mr. Tim Harris. Tim, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, and it is my pleasure and honor to be on your podcast.
I am stoked to have you on the show. And I've been doing this a little while, but you've been going at the podcast game for quite a long time. For the people who may have not heard of you yet, can you give us a little bit of a background on what you're doing in the world?
Well, we have, you mentioned the podcast. Let's start there. We have Real Estate Coaching Radio, which we started 3 years ago. I don't remember. It's had millions of downloads, and we have, tens of thousands of people that listen to us every day. And it's really been a fun exercise. And an experiment is really what it started out as, and now it's something that we just really look forward to doing every day. It's obviously on iTunes and Stitcher and the rest of all those normal outlets. And as far as ways to learn about Julie and I, probably the best way is to just buy our book on Amazon. It's called Harris Rules. It's now a #1 international bestseller, which has exceeded all of our expectations. And then if, our website, timandjulieharris.com. But those are pretty much, that's who we are. If you read our book, you'll know who we are, really.
100%. I get a kick out of that. When you say Harris Rules, I always think of that kid. Oh, Doyle Rules. Where's my $2? You remember that John Cusack movie? I can't remember the name of it.
The funny thing about the title is that I had two intentions. Julie and I, obviously, we'd been working on this book in one form or another for forever. We'd written other books, but this is a book we really wanted to kind of condense everything that we've learned from having literally hundreds of thousands of coaching calls. We wanted to get it down into some sort of easy to read, not complicated or mystical format. So it's easy to write a fat book. It's hard to write a big book, because a fat book, you can throw in all kinds of fluff and all kinds of stories and all kinds of whatever. But to write a really condensed book, just drills down, that's fluff free, takes a ton of time. But when Julie and I were thinking about the title, Harris Rules, because it's a little offensive, because it sounds like there's a lot of ego associated with, oh, who are they to say they rule? But that isn't really what the intent of it was. But we know that it would be received by some people as being sort of an affront to their egos. But the reality of it is this is just sort of the best practices and really the rules that we've learned from coaching for the past forever, that if you apply, and doesn't just apply to real estate folks, we have a lot of podcast listeners that aren't even real estate folks. When you apply these rules, they're very practical and tactical. They really do, when applied in conjunction with all the others, can have an incredibly impactful, result in your business and personal life.
I'm going to dig into those rules in a little bit. I want to get a little bit more grounded with kind of the hero's journey so far for you, Tim, and Julie as well, who couldn't be here today, but obviously you guys work together and you're married. And I'd really love to get a sense of what it's been like for you thus far. What's been some of the things that have really shaped you as a person, and you guys coming together and just being who you are in the world today?
A lot of ways I could run at that, which I appreciate a question that's open-ended like that. So Julie and I have been married forever. I'm 47 and Julie's 46. We got married when we were 21 and 20. We were high school sweethearts. We're from Columbus, Ohio. We've lived in many places in the country. As far as what our hero's journey, that's kind of I don't even feel comfortable wearing the word hero for even a millisecond, but our journey has started out as basically broke, impoverished college students. We put money together to buy our first investment property. We started together in high school. Then through college, we had a car cleaning and detailing business that, when we got out of college, we sold and didn't sell it for anything really. We just gave it to our competitor who we knew would take great care of the clients. A lot of those clients then became real estate clients. That gave us a lot of momentum in our first year in the business. Now, this is a long damn time ago. This is back in the early mid-90s. We sold over 100 houses our first year in the business. That is something that I understand has a record that, frankly, we didn't even know what it was literally, Julie and I, we tell this story and people think like we're trying to seem too humble, but it's true. We were literally sitting outside of a movie theater in Dublin, Ohio, and we were we were waiting for a movie to start, and we were trying to remember all the houses we'd sold. And we got up to the number around 75. This was like August, July, August. And we called our broker and we asked him, is that a good number? We really had no clue how many houses the average agent sells per year. We just were totally and completely ignorant. We just drilled down, worked our asses off. We're willing to do what we didn't want to do, and we didn't want to do it at the highest level, even before we realized that was kind of a theme of our lives the following couple decades. But yeah, we added it all up. It was the 75 number. Rory said, "Get to 100 and call me back." That's what he said. He said, "Get to 100 and call me back." So we did. We got to 100. Actually, we ended up, in contract and selling 103. And, after that happened, basically, we had just really an uncomfortable amount of attention. National Association of Realtors, at the time we were with RE/MAX, we did just all these different, the real estate industry loves, to use your word, a hero. And doing that made us a hero. And then Howard Brinton, all these other people that if you're in the real estate space, you'll know who they are. They kind of gravitated towards us, asked us to be speakers and all these other types of things. And just from that, we built momentum, and it was at I'm skipping the real estate career, but we sold real estate for almost 10 years, selling between 100 and 200 houses per year. Julie and I have been investing in real estate properties. By accident, again, true story, we got into coaching. It was at a Howard Brinton event. Howard it was like 97, 98, 99. Howard, don't remember. Howard was saying, "I'm going to start this coaching thing, and, I'm going to take on 20 clients. And, this was in front of a group of 2,000 people. We're experimenting with it. So if you want to be one of the 20 clients, bring your business card up on break." So then comes the break. And literally everyone in the audience was throwing their business cards at him. And then somebody out in the hall asked, "Hey, would you guys coach me?" And I was like, "Don't know what the hell that means, but let's give it a try." And not that person, but the person after that is actually still a coaching client from all those years ago, Michael Gordon. And so that's basically how we got into coaching. And the coaching thing then just started to spin up. Again, a lot of it from riding on the coattails of our previous selves when we had that success selling real estate. And then eventually the coaching business got to the point where it just made more sense to put our best energies towards that than it was selling real estate in Columbus, Ohio. So does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Beautifully told. And I just want to say how grateful I am, because it's like you stepped into each piece. You needed the money. You started out doing that. You just threw your heart and soul into it together, and you just made, not a killing. That's probably not the right word, but you did an incredible job just getting into it and loving it. And then, okay, when the next highest and best use of your talents and services showed up, you stepped into that and that and that. And you never said, "Oh, I'm not going to do that," or "I'm not going to serve at that level." You just said yes, and you're going to find a way. And I really love that about your stories. You didn't just say, "Oh my God, what am I going to do?" It's just, as opportunity showed up, you said, "I'm going to figure it out." Is that kind of how it went for you guys?
Yeah, pretty much. We didn't overanalyze too much, worrying about how we were going to do it. Julie and I are it's probably the Ohio in us, but we're very practical about when we're making decisions. There's not a lot of, there's not a lot of like romance associated with the business decisions we make. And we've always done this before I had the ability to really verbalize it like I'm trying to now. We've always made decisions based on profit. We've always made decisions based on the ability to make a certain amount of money after everything so that we could invest in real estate. Our end game, back when, when Julie and I were in college, back when we were starting to sell real estate, our end game was always to have enough rental properties that were paid off, that were cash flowing, that our money could work for us and we no longer had to work for our money. That is our definition of rich, where your money works for you and you no longer have to work for your money. So I can't say we've always stayed on mission, right? For all of our military friends out there, they'll appreciate that. I can't say we've always kept that as our true north, but pretty much we always have. We've always benchmarked our success every year by the number of houses that we were able to buy. And Julie and I don't borrow money. We only pay cash. So a lot of people that are investing in real estate, a lot of people they're going to, "Oh my God, why aren't you leveraging yourself?" Because here's the answer why. I've never seen a person with no debt go bankrupt. That's why. And I've seen too many people, as a result of coaching, who've taken too many risks, leveraging themselves into too much debt, have that reverse on them. But our plan has been methodical, boring, as I said, non-romantic, not particularly exciting. Nobody celebrates it when we purchase another house, but that's how we've always kept ourselves on the straight and narrow. Is this moving us towards our goal or away from our goal? And that's been the same goal we've had. I mean, like I said, we've been married for 27 years next year.
I can't wait to see your wealth dynamics profile. I have a feeling you guys are two peas in a pod, very much on the practical trader tempo spectrum. If I had to take a guess, but I've been wrong before. it's a really beautiful thing to see when two people come together like that. And as part of their partnership, they also create together. You know, they create wealth together, and they have a very specific goal or action item in mind. And it's, you know, it's one of these rules that makes you successful, right? It's this no debt rule. Like, I'm sure you guys sailed through 2008 not worrying about a thing. And yeah, you took a little bit of hit on, you know, unactualized revenue or unactualized asset
Actually,
value.
we didn't. Truthfully, we didn't. I mean, here's what we did. We pivoted. So when the market changed, we saw, Julie and I remember, dude, it was a coaching call. It was September of 2007. I even remember the guy's first name. His name was Mark. And he was crying on our coaching call. And this was a guy that was making, to him, over $1 million per year net before taxes, living in California, right? Kicking it, owning it. And all of a sudden, his business completely and totally went to crap. He had been using the same loan officers forever, and those loan officers had been putting all of his deals into these subprime deals. When New Century failed, I mean, this was forever ago, right? 11 years ago, but I remember this like it was yesterday. New Century failed, and all of a sudden, all these other subprimers failed. When people talk about the real estate crash, they always talk about it being in 2008, but it really did start in 2006. It started because, I won't get into the semantics of it, but it was obvious to anybody who was paying attention to the real estate markets were going to crash. So what Julie and I did is we pivoted and we started teaching agents how to basically go after this, what we knew was going to happen, the distressed market, short sales, REOs, becoming, you know, the referred, all that. So we pivoted from normal sort of business building coaching to focused on that. So whatever you were doing, still do it if it's working, but here's this other thing. And as a result of that, agents were able to shift from working primarily with your traditional customers, real estate clients, and they were able to pivot to focus on the distress stuff. And some of those guys made so much money that they basically were, you know, they're rich. They don't have to work anymore. And some of them, we still get to this day, which is, you know, incredibly powerful. We'll still get emails from people, you know, they're on our private Facebook page where they'll say, I've been following Tim and Julie and they saved my ass back in the real estate crash. They got me doing this, the other thing. And now I built my business back up again. And I mean, so to answer your question, we killed it during the crash because we were able to buy real estate, dude. We stayed on mission and we bought places in Vegas, everywhere. We buy in usually 6 to 8 different states, and stuff went on sale. And it went on sale to the point where we waited intentionally for people to be so pessimistic about real estate that we could go and buy. We don't buy fancy stuff. We buy normal meat and potato houses, and we just started buying them like crazy. And, you know, so to answer your question, and in maybe a more helpful way, there's money to be made regardless of what direction the market's going. You can't, you know, a lot of people think they can only make only make money when all ships are rising. But the reality of it is, there's still the same amount of money out there. It's just flowing to different people. So you just have to acknowledge that maybe it's flowing in a different direction than the direction you've been headed. And if you change, there's no reason you should have any kind of personal recession. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And for people listening at home, I mean, it's basically just a short selling market. You know, you can make money on the way up, you can make money on the way down. The key is not getting emotional as the market shows you what it wants to do next, because you're never going to outlast the market. The market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent, as Warren Buffett would say.
Yeah, and you know, Warren Buffett came out and said, what did he say? He said, someone asked him what his investment thesis was, and this was like in 2009. He said, if I were a small individual mom and pop, I would be buying single family homes. That's what he said. And then they asked him why he wasn't. He said he couldn't figure out how to scale the management of it. But
well,
what
now he
happened?
is. Berkshire
now he is.
Like, they're everywhere. They're all over California for sure. I'm pretty sure it's nationwide, and they've got the money to back that for sure. So that's I'm sure these are some of your rules, right, Tim? So can we talk about some of your other more popular rules that people should, like, if everybody should know one of your rules or two of your rules, which ones would they be?
Well, can I pick the most offensive ones that'll piss people off the most?
Yeah, please get after it.
All right. So, yeah, you know what? It's funny. I had a brain fart. I had forgotten the fact that you came from the financial industry, and you are absolutely correct. And I actually learned what I just told you from somebody who was also in the financial industry. He had to tell me that he makes money regardless of what direction the stock market goes. And he said he makes more money when people are panicking because they'll call in more trades irrationally. And if he can't talk them down, he gets commission on every sale. So yeah, what you're saying makes perfect sense. All right. So I'll tell you one of the ones that usually goes against most people's, this isn't an actual rule, or maybe let me make sure it's not. I'm pretty sure it's not. Okay. Don't do what you're passionate about. Don't follow your passion. There would be one. That's something that raises eyebrows. People don't like to hear it. Don't follow your passion. Your passion will betray you. Passions are emotion attached to ego. You and I were talking about Ryan Halliday. He talks about that in his Ego, the Enemy book, one of the books we suggest to all of our podcast listeners and all of our coaching clients. Great book. So yeah, I mean, if you're following your passion, you think that just because you have a passion for something that's going to lead to profits, and the profits are going to be in abundance, that you can reinvest that money and be rich where your money works for you, you no longer work for your money, well, you're probably going to be disappointed. You're probably going to fail. So the idea that just because you have a passion in something that the money will follow, that would be something that I think a lot of people get confused about. That would be, when I'm speaking to a general audience, that's something that usually raises eyebrows because it completely flows against the current zeitgeist about what it takes to be a successful entrepreneur. I'm curious, what's your opinion on that?
So yes, and what I've learned, and I spent 10 years trying to figure this out, was that I had really successful mentors. And I've done a lot of different types of careers, including real estate. I was a real estate agent in New York City for several years before my dad passed away. Is that I've gotten great advice from people who are obviously successful, because success leaves clues, that just didn't work for me. And I'll tell you why. It's because I didn't have the same flow or wealth creation dynamic that that person had. So if they were really good with ideas, for example, and I wasn't an ideas guy, I was a people guy, and I took their ideas type advice, I would fall flat on my face. And it's not because it's bad advice. It's just bad advice for me, whose dynamic or flow, if you will, is people. And that's where I should be spending my time, is building relationships and working with people. It sounds like to me, if I had to guess, again, we could confirm this. I can send you a token for this test. It's one of the best tests I've ever taken for entrepreneurs, called Wealth Dynamics. I didn't make it. It's Roger James Hamilton, but over 500,000 people have taken it. All my clients have to take it. All my employees and contractors have to take it, because I need to know where they fit and what they're going to be good at, so I can understand how to fit them into the puzzle that is teamwork and leadership. So, if I get advice about systems and process and spreadsheets, and I'm trying to do it, but I'm on the other side of the wealth dynamic spectrum, I'm going to fail and fall flat on my face. So when you give advice like that, that's like, everybody should do this thing. Yes. And if it's naturally people that are going to be great at that kind of tempo energy that you seem to have, that timing, that market savvy, that, follow the profit, a lot of people aren't going to be lit up by that, and therefore will not succeed, because they're not driving with the why or the what or the who that actually is their dynamic, if that makes sense.
I like what you said, but can we debate it just ever so, because your listeners will appreciate it?
I would love to. Yeah, absolutely. Because I'm always looking to get better and tighter on this particular art. I think this will revolutionize the entrepreneurship industry, and that's what I'm looking to do.
Well, let's hope. All right. So first of all, passion is a fleeting feeling. It's just an emotion that's usually tied to some sort of ego thing, which is in itself is not a bad thing. But if you're only, so what we found coaching, salespeople, entrepreneurs, is that for the most part, those who are passion driven, who are after their one thing, you mentioned that, who are trying to have that be their North Star, they only work at a high level when they feel a certain way. Okay. They only work at a high level when they feel a certain way. And if you only work at a high level when you feel a certain way, and that way you dissociate with the word passion, because all of us love that feeling, right? So if you're only going to achieve at a high level, make that call, do that sales presentation at a high level, or maybe whatever it is that you do, whatever your craft is, when at a high level, when you feel a certain way, you don't feel that way often enough to really have any long-term benefit from it. Okay, so there's the one thing, and that's the reason that we suggest that folks don't follow their passion, because
emotional mastery as well. That's another habit that I think is the most important habit you could ever form. And I'm a big Tony Robbins guy, and that's one of the things that Tony's taught for 40 years now, is that emotional mastery. It's not because you feel like it. You don't always wake up feeling like it. It's because you've gotten that state, that emotional state mastered, where you can get into it very quickly and continue to wire and fire it over time.
Okay, you mentioned Tony, so let's talk about him for a second. I have noticed that we're probably going to be doing, if we pull on the string, he keynotes this thing called Real Estate Wealth Expo. We're talking with them about doing some presenting with them, and so I was watching to see what Tony was presenting, because he's usually the keynote, and I have noticed that I really like Tony Robbins, and I really appreciate the fact that he has integrity in what he says, and he is willing to evolve what he says and how he says it. So I'm 100%. Watching this which is really cool, because most people that are in any kind of,
he doesn't need it, right? He's the best, but he also doesn't need to be doing what he's doing. He doesn't need to be beating the crap out of himself. He's half a billionaire at this point. He doesn't need to do anything ever again, but he loves what he does, and it helps people, and he keeps doing it. That's why we bring people to his events.
Yeah, that exactly. And so I was listening to him present Real Estate Wealth Expo, and he was being shockingly what would the word be? There were no secret type phraseology. He wasn't trying to even remotely sound mystical or spiritual, whereas maybe before, when he was really heavily into NLP, really heavy into mindset stuff, by before I mean maybe 2 decades ago, his presentation would have been a lot less practical and tactile than it was to what I was watching. And one of the things he did talk about in his own way was one of the points in Harris Rules, which is basically your ever increasing long-term success comes down to the acceptance of this one truism. It's doing what you don't want to do when you don't want to do it at the highest level.
Yes,
And
100%.
yeah, right. I mean, verbalizing that is something that is, when I say it, when, people say, well, duh, but really, how many people do that? How many people in life wait around to feel a certain way? That's a passionate, oh my gosh, now I feel inspired, right?
So I think, the definition is important, because I do agree with
Yeah,
the premise that you shouldn't wait around to feel motivated. Motivation's
right.
like sugar, right? It wears off, so we recommend it daily. However, to be inspired and to have a why that drives you forward, regardless of how you feel, now that's something you can work with.
Yes, exactly. So how do you actually use this? How do you and I make this thing practical, right? It's because your emotional state will follow your actions. And again, this is an intuitive thing that everyone knows, but maybe they can't put the thoughts together. So if you're not feeling motivated, if you're not feeling inspired, if you didn't want to talk to me today and do your podcast, you get into action, you get your thing going, you maybe have a cup of coffee, you work out, whatever it is. So your emotional state will always change when you're in action. If you wait to feel a certain way, passion, thinking that somehow that's going to get you into action, you will fail most likely. And that's the reason that so many people I am working on my mindset. I hear that. I don't know if you hear that. I hear that all the time. I'm working on my mindset. I'm going to read some mindset books. Okay, how's that working out for you? There's a whole industry that's nothing about helping people mentally masturbate themselves into oblivion, working on their mindset, where the reality of it was is they're just to get into action, they would all of a sudden find that their mindset and started to trigger these types of emotions that they need to build the momentum that they must have in order to become successful at whatever they choose. So I think we're saying the same thing.
I just got to the same conclusion recently, and I put it pretty succinctly, and I won't toot my own horn, but I did put this on my Facebook about a week ago. It was, don't wait till you feel good to do something productive. Do something productive and you'll feel good. And that seemed to get a lot of traction, and people like that. But I think it's really succinct. It's like you said, motion creates emotion. When you feel good, yes, you'll take more action, but you'll also feel good from taking action. So if you hate the way you feel, I don't wake up every day, and I'm sure Tony will say the same thing, or Tim or Julie or anybody who's been successful will say the same thing. You don't wake up every day ready to crush it and take on the world. Sometimes you wake up in a cold sweat, in a panic, with a million things going through your head and running through your day. But then you have habits that catch you. You have habits that make sure that you are good to go. You have that cup of coffee, you go for a run, you jump in the ocean, punch some waves, whatever you do to get yourself in that state, that then you can be of best and highest service. And your why, it can't be about you completely. I mean, it might start.
I agree with you. Yep.
But, for me, and I learned this from Sarah Blakely, and I'm going to probably butcher it, but she said something that was really telling, and she's first female self-made billionaire. So I tend to listen when she speaks. She said something that really stuck with me. She says, if your why or your vision is just to take care of you, you're going to make like 75 grand a year. If it's you and your family, maybe it's 150, 200. If it's you, your family, your community, your tribe, maybe you're up to $500,000 a year. But if you want to make millions, you want to make billions, you have to have a vision that encompasses all those people. Because otherwise, why are you going to do it? If it's just about you, you're going to fall short.
So let's drill down on that, because I love that. So I'll tell you about a coaching call. True story. This was forever ago, 10 years ago. I had a guy, brilliant, smart, wonderful, just really nice guy. And he was absolutely petrified to pick up the phone and make any kind of call that would resemble a sales call. Just wouldn't do it, because every time, and so, a couple coaching calls go by, he's not even making the simplest of contacts to folks that would be, great real estate clients for him. So on the coaching call, we went through it. So I acted like I was the customer. I sort of wanted to model out this. So, and he was going to basically keep track of the emotions he was feeling, right? So I was having him make a sort of a mental, he probably was writing it down. I don't know, it was on the other end of the phone. So here was the process. So I'm about to call up a prospect. Okay, now write down all the feelings you're feeling. And he wrote down this long list of, I'm worried that they're going to say this to me. They're going to ask me a question I don't know the answer to, that they're going to make me uncomfortable because they're going to say this, or this is going to happen, or the rejection, or da 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 da. So as soon as he was basically ready to get into action, his ego filled his mind with all of these. It was attacking him in such a way that was creating this self-doubt. Because why? He was focused on his own self. He was focused on himself, your point. He was focused on his own emotions. He was focused on how he felt. He was focused on, oh my God, what if they say this or they do this? How am I going to feel as a result if they reject me, if they hang up the phone, if they say I have an ugly dog, or whatever his mind was filling with. So I had him write this down, and he did. And it was only 1 week later that he said it made a huge impact. It was, how can I be of service to you? And I had him write that down. He took a picture of it, sent it to me. And I'm sure it's still there right in front of his computer. So before he picks up the phone, his mental state has to be in being of service to the person on the other end of the phone, like you and I are being right now. You and I, we're in a zone. We're not trying to self-aggrandize ourselves. It doesn't feel like either one of us are doing that. We're trying to use words that are intentionally designed to help the people listening to us. Well, that's what I wanted him to do when he was on his making his prospecting calls, because when you're in that state, to your point again, of making a contribution, of trying to help the other person, your ego cannot be the loudest voice in your head. So all those feelings of self-doubt, all those feelings of, oh my gosh, what if this happens, or if they say this, they say the other thing, all those things that were basically killing his potential were maybe still there in his head. I'm not Dr. Phil, I can't make that go away, but they weren't the loudest voice in his head, because he was focusing on the fact that the person on the other end of the phone needed his help, and he knew he could help them. And that was a pivotal moment for him.
I love that, Tim. And it's true. It's like those voices never go away. Your ego is always going to be there, and it's there for a reason. It's to protect you, right? It's to keep you alive, right? But there's a point at which the ego no longer serves, and you have to allow spirit to come in, or whatever you believe in, right? This grander force that's bigger than us, that we're all a part of, to come in and say, all right, what's the best and highest good for all things concerned? And you see, like, I just read a great book by Ray Dalio, who I also follow. He's another billionaire who runs the biggest hedge fund in the world. And Ray just put out a great book that I recommend to everybody. It's called Principles. And the first volume is Life and Work Principles. And one of the things he talks about is how people who are very successful tend to think in second, third, and fourth order consequences. So they think of things that are more than just what affects them, and more than just affect, the here and now. And as a result, they tend to think of other people and consider the best and highest good for all concerned, and do things that may not be in their best interest in the short term, so that long term everybody can win more. And that's one of the main key tenets here at Make More Marbles is you might see, your ego might mess with you from time to time and thinking, oh, I got to get mine, right? And that's really what your ego's saying. It's like, oh, I'm, in this scarcity mode, I have to get mine. When you zoom out and you say, all right, well, what's best for everybody? How can I play the long game here? Well, then you ultimately end up winning more, because you create a bigger pie. And that's one
true.
of the key.
And that's the reason you're doing your show. That's the reason that I'm on your show, with that exact intent. It's the ripples that come from the pebble heading the pond, and you and I can see the immediate ripples, but the ones that people that are listening to this, 100 years from now, one of the thing you just said could have the most profound impact on their lives. I mean, that's what's resonating inside your head. You're right. I don't like sounding spiritual, because it's confusing to a lot of folks, confusing to me. Here, I wrote something down here, and maybe this will resonate with your listeners. So this is something that I've learned the hard way through lots of coaching calls. And frankly, even the blessing about coaching is that it also causes a lot of introspection, which is sometimes unpleasant. That's the truth. So I wrote down ego equals fear. Now, what is that? Fear, you got me triggered on this. So the word fear and ego are synonymous. I know they're not, but just for the sake of explanation, let's think about this. There's two types of fear. And this is not just Tim pontificating, though it is a little bit. This is stuff that if you were to drill down and read, there's been psychological stuff, circadian brain, lizard brain, all that type of stuff. People way smarter than me will be able to explain this in very scientific terms if you're interested in learning more about this. But let me just skim the surface. There's two types of fear. There's psychological fear and physical fear. Physical fear is easy to understand. Physical fear is this, again, the lizard brain thing, the hardwired brain thing that makes us fight or flight. The thing's about to eat me, the bus is about to hit me. Fortunately, in most people's lives, unless you're like one of our, military clients, we're blessed to have some guys that are retired SEALs. Those guys have felt really profound fear, and they will not they don't say they don't feel fear. They do feel fear, but they've been trained up to the point where they still take action. So that aside, there's two types of fear, physical fear and psychological fear. Most people in all reality in their lives might feel real physical fear once or twice. Maybe, maybe you have somebody that tries to mug you or something happens. But for the most part, we live these very blessed, elegant lives where we can stay in our nice little bubbles and we really don't have to basically experience too much fear. Are we on the same page so far?
Agreed.
Okay, then there's psychological fear. Now, psychological fear is ego fear. Psychological fear is the what if, the can I do this? Your listeners, your people that are listening, you're inspiring entrepreneurs, obviously. A lot of the things that's going to hold them back is their unwillingness or their inability to sell. You could have the best product ever, but if you cannot sell it, you will fail. And somebody, will figure out a better way to sell a lesser product and make a ton of money because of the fact that they didn't have that fear, or at least they were willing to move around it. The example I gave you of that coaching client, that was psychological fear. It was rooted in his ego. So there's psychological fear and there's real fear. The psychological fear are all the thoughts you have in your head. But here's the interesting thing that's fascinating. It's about as scientific as I'll get. The actual physiological reaction that we have to both fears is the same. So if you are, wherever you are and you have some real scary physical, you almost step off the curb in New York City, almost get hit by a cab, somebody pulls you back and you have that holy that just happened moment, that's a real fear thing. Or you see the cab coming and you jump off, fight or flight kicked in, that's a real thing. The psychological fear, oh my gosh, I'm going to pick up the phone, or I'm going to go in a sales presentation, or I'm going to have to, whatever it is. The way our bodies react, identical. Same chemicals are released, same whatevers.
Cortisol, adrenaline, etc. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we experience is the same as if we were being almost eaten by the pterodactyl, if you believe that humans are around during dinosaurs, which people are starting to believe. So if you believe those things, that psychological fear is the same as that physical fear. There's no wonder that when people are feeling psychological fear, that they have tunnel vision, because when you feel fear, your body reacts in a way that's designed to get you the hell out of that situation, either through running or fighting your way out. When you pick up the phone, I use that as an example because most people are paralyzed by that or public speaking, and you've had that rush of doubt, that rush of fear, you get that same tunnel vision, and your brain wants you to get out of that situation, and the result is basically failure. So what you have to realize is the psychological fear is optional. The psychological fear you can actually minimize. You can't ever get rid of it, but you can control it to the point where you can choose not to react to it, just like our Navy SEAL friends do, through knowing what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, through having an organized approach, through experience, frankly, but you don't even really have that much. Truthfully, nowadays, you don't even have to have that much experience. If you got your real estate license today, if you followed a few, fundamental rules about, salesmanship and all the rest of it, you could probably be successful in most markets relatively quick, if you were able to move past this fear thing. Because the fear thing is what makes people do dumb things in business, makes people do dumb things in life, because they're trying to avoid, look how we build these, real estate. I keep on going back to that because that's our primary customer. They'll buy leads. Why do you buy leads when the world is full of leads? You buy leads because you're fearful of actually talking to people about trying to basically pre-qualify them to become a lead. But there's so many examples like that, how fear is the ultimate destructor. And fear, for the sake of this explanation, is synonymous with ego. Fear is the ultimate destructor of your potential, your potentiality, if you don't accept the fact that psychological fear, physical fear are two separate things. And psychological fear, how you choose to react to a certain conversation that's going on in your head, is just that. It's a choice. Does that vibe with you?
I love this. And I just want to add, I'm going to yes and this, just to play off it. I think the only real, and to use your Navy SEAL reference, I'm blessed to have a lot of friends that have served in special forces. And one of the things they say is they revert to the level of their training, right? When things hit the fan, it's not rising your potential. It's what am I trained to do? And that's the best I'm going to be able to do in that situation. So they already know that going in, and that's why they train so hard, so that the worst day is their best. And if you add to that, well, we can train too, and luckily our training isn't life or death, but if you can approach every day as an opportunity, and let's get practical and tactical here, to get the reps, right? and wire and fire those states of emotional clarity and wire and fire those abilities to continue to pick up the phone. When I first got started, before I even got into my real estate career, when everything came down around us, and this was 2007, I graduated from college in 2007. My first job after I couldn't get a bartending gig or any other gig for that matter was as a junior broker. And what we did was sit in a room on Wall Street, 44 Wall, I'll never forget, and call 500 times. I would get on the train at 4 a.m., 6 a.m. I would be cold calling 500 times in the morning till 12 o'clock. And I would get hung up on a lot. But it was the best education I could ever have, because the ones that were exciting, and I got over the fear really quickly. I would do a half-hour lunch, get a bagel, come back, buy a new tie because I would normally spill something on my tie, and then go ahead and call 500 people and get rejected again in the afternoon. Some people stayed at night and called Australia and other places. We did England in the morning, we did US during the afternoon. Some people would stay and call Australia. I actually went and got my real estate license at night just to hedge my bets. And that's how I ended up in real estate. They swooped me up. They could see something in me. From that moment on, I ended up working for the 8th largest real estate firm in New York City and got 5 promotions inside of 2 years, had a team of 6 people working for me. And then my dad passed away. So that education of just getting in it and just wiring and firing it every day, it was because I had no choice. I was going to do that or I had to move home. Right. I would either go into debt or fail or lose it or whatever. And even I only lasted for a month and a half in that job before I just couldn't stand it anymore. It was just so dull and so just soul sucking to be in a windowless room, just making phone calls all day with people that didn't want to talk to me. I had to eventually quit. However, it gave me the biggest lesson was that you can overcome any fear and you can make it fun doing it if you're willing to.
Yeah, I mean, but what you were just expressing is the doing what you didn't want to do and you didn't want to do at the highest level. What you were expressing is basically the essence of what it takes to be successful long-term in anything. And that's the very thing that, it's a funny, I wrote this down why do most people decide to be small business owners or entrepreneurs, in your opinion? Why do most people decide to take the leap and whatever?
I always tell people if I knew how hard it would have been before I started, I would have never started. And the reason is I believe that when you have a desire to do something, they only give you enough challenges, like life is designed this way, so that you don't quit. So you can continue to grow and you don't quit. But if I knew how hard it would have been, forget it. I would have never started.
You know what? That's a really honest answer because
they want,
right.
Whatever. They want to be in control of their time. They want to, guess what? You're making yourself a job that's 80 hours a week instead of leaving one that's 40 hours a week with zero risk. Now you have all the risk and now it's all on you.
Dude, that's a shockingly honest answer, and I really love it because the truth is there's the whole entrepreneurial myth thing has really been spun up in the past, 10 years, and there's so much sort of romantic notions about being a small business owner, and it's exactly what you just said. It's so much more work, takes so much more time, and really, not everyone should do it. A lot of people can, have fantastic lives, better lives, if they keep their normal, day in, day out job and then just have some sort of side job, some sort of side hustle, as the kids call it nowadays, and that's the truth. But yeah, you're right. Most people get into business because they want to have a sense of freedom. They don't want to have a boss. They have this big sort of, I want to sit around and, read books and go on podcasts every day. And I want to work on my website and I want to just do all this other creative outlet type stuff. And they fail. You have to get into real estate and be very. So when we ask that question, usually of audiences and mostly salespeople, and they all raise their hands and they'll say, the question is, by the way, what is your product, right? And this might be a good place for us to round the bend. I don't know how long your show is, but what is your product? And that's a question that if you really think about that question, a lot of people will absolutely be offended by what truly is the right answer. So, and I imagine that when I go through this process briefly, you'll have maybe your initial reaction might be similar to what I see on a lot of the faces of the folks that when we present this live. So I ask what your product is, and people will say, I want to make a contribution. They say, I want to build a team where I can take care of all the folks on my team. They'll say, I want to build a better, they have all these sort of, really well-intentioned, sort of nice, socially correct, answers. And then sometimes they'll say, great customer service. Or if Julie and I are presenting to agents, they'll say, well, our product is selling houses. Our product is the other thing. And the answer is your product, and the only answer is your product is profit. Because if you don't have profit, unless you're running a nonprofit, then you don't have a business and you're out of business. And see, nobody says that. Nobody tells people that the real point or one of your main drivers in business has to be driving a profit out of it, or unless you're already rich, where your money works for you, you no longer have to work for your money. Unless you're focused and have literally at the top line every year when you're doing your business planning, or every month like we do when you're reviewing your P&L, if you don't have profit as the first line, you will not make any, because there will always be some squeaky wheel that needs greased. There'll always be some sort of employee that wants a raise. There'll always be some sort of marketing idea. You have to have product as your profit. And if your business, unless you're some sort of publicly traded business where you're playing, your money comes from stock. I'm talking about normal mom and pops who are, as they say, customer driven, or rather their profit comes from customers, not from selling stock in their company. You understand what I'm saying? More than I probably.
You're also not bankrolled by the government, where if you mess up,
yeah, exactly.
The taxpayers, because they still want a Navy. They're not going to just be like, oh, well, we won't pay for the Navy anymore, so you can waste as much money as you want.
Right, but if you, as a small business owner, this is not a thing that's trendy to say, but it's the truth. If you don't have profit as your goal, as your main driver, you will not make any. You will be basically operating at a deficiency every month, and you will be, as you said, better off had you kept your job. And people are afraid. It's almost like it's become the last social taboo to talk about the fact that your whole point of being in business, unless it's a social venture, nonprofit and whatnot, is to make profit. And most people know how to spend money, like in real estate. In a lot of businesses, they like to talk about how many units. I sold 300 houses or 600 houses or a billion houses. Well, how much profit did you make? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, well, send me your tax return. And then you'll see their tax returns. And here's what the shocking truth is. If you don't, well, I won't make you uncomfortable. So I'll just add with this. Well, I'll take the risk, because I bet you'll know, if you don't mind. You can edit this off if you don't like the question. How much profit do you think the average big brokerage makes, before expenses, before paying their agents, before paying their overhead, before paying their rents? What do you think the average big brokerage makes?
Well, I only know from my own experience that they're on a 50-50 split with most agents when they're starting out, and then it can go up to 70-30.
Well, I mean on a macro level, right? So if your brokerage makes, and I know this because I look at brokerages P&Ls. I work with big brokerages. Julie and I work with some of the largest broker owners in the country. And if you make so you say $1 billion in commissions, and let's say your brokerage takes in, $30 million and all the rest of it. Most brokerages, and this is a fact, make usually around 3%. Wow. And then from that, they have to pay all their, right, they're making no money. That's the point. So your brokerage could sell $1 billion in real estate, let's say, and make tens of millions of dollars in commission. And you as the broker owner are probably making, well, you're sure as hell making a lot less than your top agent. You're making hundreds of thousands while they're making personally millions of dollars. Now, here's another little fascinating thing. And again, this is all, factual, based on a guy that I interviewed on our podcast, who is one of the most recognized experts on doing mergers and acquisitions in the real estate space. He's starting to do mergers and acquisitions for these real estate agents that are forming these teams. And I asked him the same question: what are you seeing as their profit? And I had my own opinion based on coaching, but it was nice to hear it from someone who had actually looked at spreadsheets, like dozens of them. And he said around 10%. And I thought that was really fascinating. So that means, to break this down, again, this is, profit is your motive, but that isn't your motive if you're following that big team model. And big teams are making their ways into other industries as well, insurance and car sales and things like that. Well, if you make $1 million in commissions, not sales, commissions, guys, as a team, you're probably, as the guy or gal who's taking all the risk, only going to make $100,000 plus or minus. That's okay. That's before taxes. That's how much you're going to pay yourself, roughly, $8,000 a month. And your company your entity is making $100,000 or $80,000 a month, let's say, and you're making roughly 10% of that. Now, that's fascinating to me. So your team that you spend all this time working on, all this time building, all these, you're only going to make the same amount of money that somebody who literally is in your same office, who only grosses, has total gross commissions. You're an ex-real estate person, so you know what I'm saying, of probably around 175, 150. So the person selling 175, 150, who you probably, as a team leader, look down upon, is making the same net income as you. Now, why has that happened to my industry? It's because no one has stopped to actually have an honest conversation with real estate agents that are spinning up these teams And no one said, hey, guess what? Your driver should be profit, not just having all these units for the sake of bragging about the fact that you've sold 1,000 units, when the reality of it was is you could have actually put more money in your pocket had you sold, 20% of those numbers. Does that make sense?
Not so harried and crazy. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you make $1 million at the end of the year, if you spend 999,000.
In your experience, is that I don't have as much experience as you do with looking into other industries. Have you, and especially in your market days, is that plaguing other industries outside of real estate where you've seen that type
100%.
of model becoming?
Especially in the internet marketing, you'll see these big launches and people talk about, oh, I made $3, $5, $10 million on a launch. And we ask, okay, well, after you pay out affiliate commissions and all that and expenses, this is on a digital product, right? You'd think the margin would be pretty high, but it's like some of they're losing. And it's like, how can you possibly bring several $1 million through the door and never actually make a profit? And that's obscene to me. Who is making a profit is Facebook for ads. Their affiliates making decent money. The people that kind of, everybody but them, essentially. Their team is making money.
Why don't people talk about that? So why is it that this is a taboo topic?
I really would love to dig into this more. I got another podcast coming up in 6 minutes, Tim, but we're gonna keep talking here because you're a pretty sharp guy, and I'd love to get into it with you. I'd love to be on your show as well if you'll have me.
Of course.
But I want to kind of wind this one down with a question I like to ask all my guests. I never tell them what it's going to be beforehand, but this is the Make More podcast, and we're all about helping entrepreneurs, investors, and philanthropists win more by collaborating. The way we do that is we connect resources, opportunities, people, and systems together. It's an acronym we call CROPS. So since you've been so generous with us and sharing your time, your wisdom, and I want to continue to do that, we want to open that question up to you, Tim. What's a way that we can connect a resource, an opportunity, a person, a system to your current mission in life that we can help you get there faster?
Oh, I like that. I would say that the best way, if people want to basically get more Tim and Julie, is just to listen to our daily podcast. And it's easy to find. It's a real estate coaching radio, but you can find it online. And like I said at the top of the show, the book, Harris Rules, we really have, it's not really all, it's kind of like our best of album. There's another book we're working on now, which actually does deal with, the question that we're just playing around with regards to financial questions. That's our next book. But those are the two ways. If someone wants to, learn more about, Julie and I joke that we're trying to bring like a stoic philosophy to modern business. And that's kind of what we're trying to do, make things practical and tactical so people can actually have lives that aren't all about basically being a slave to their business or being a slave to, being a slave. I mean, they can actually create financial abundance in their lives. And if you just keep your head screwed on straight, it's actually easier to do that than, frankly, a lot of people maybe want you to know or want you to believe it is. It's not complicated. And when you and when you stay on mission for long enough, to your point earlier, you're going to accomplish your goal, provided that the mission you chose in the first place was one that was going to be in alignment with where you wanted to be. That's that's another topic for another day.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And how can people get in touch if they want to reach out?
Oh, we can email tim@timandjulieharris.com, tim@timandjulieharris.com.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sorry Julie couldn't make it. Please send my regards. I'm really excited to continue the conversation. Apologies for having to jet, but it's been an absolute pleasure. And on behalf of everybody at Make More Marbles, we really appreciate you being here, and thank you.
Likewise, it has been my pleasure and honor. And yes, I'll absolutely invite you to be on our podcast.
Thank you very much, Tim. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks so much for listening to the Make More Marbles podcast. For more tips, hacks, and strategies to create an amazing, abundant life in your health, wealth, and relationships, whatever that means to you, head on over to makemoremarbles.com. Check out our cool explainer video about what we're about, and join our community of entrepreneurial game changers. We want to help you level up your life in every possible way. And don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, or Google Play, wherever you're listening to your podcasts, and please do leave a review. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next podcast.